On the Jianwu continent, in the demonic sect of the sacred origin, the protagonist was tied to a bed, asking the girls to let him go. But the woman moved even closer, saying she could not do that and calling the protagonist her husband. She emphasized that this was their great wedding day, so how could he have the heart to leave his new wife alone in that empty room? The protagonist was Zhao Mu, and as strange as it sounded, he really was a transmigrator. That woman, who fulfilled her twisted desires by pretending to take on different roles, was definitely not his wife. 1 year ago, he transmigrated to that continent as a young noble master, even becoming engaged to a royal princess. Just when his life was about to reach its peak, he was kidnapped by a group of demonic cultivators from the demonic sect of the sacred origin. Back then, he never imagined that becoming a prisoner would only be the beginning of everything. The real nightmare was still to come. He discovered that his pure yang body was the perfect resource for cultivating the mystical arts of the nine yin. No one would care whether a servant disciple lived or died. Because of that, he was nothing more than a tool to boost the cultivation of several beautiful girls. He always had to work very hard, really hard. Even with his body filled with pure yang qi, he was already on the verge of completely drying up his vital energy. He tried to tell them that he was not very happy about having his life end in that way, but it was useless. One of the cultivators continued doing what she was doing and stressed that the protagonist should feel honored to die by her hands. She picked up a bottle saying that inside was a yang solidification pill. With that, he could properly refine his potency and stimulate his pure yang body. Where I live, this pill is blue and really does solidify things. She explained that the mystical art of the nine yin she was cultivating was about to advance, so he could not be stingy with that body of his and could not go soft now. She threw several pills into the protagonist's mouth while insisting that if he helped her advance, it would be an honorable death. Zhao Mu tried to resist, telling her to let him go, but the girl lay on top of him, telling him to put in a little more effort. As his vision grew heavier and heavier, the protagonist began to think that he had barely had time to get to know that world, and he questioned whether he would really be drained to death by that filthy fox. A tremendous rage grew inside him, making him clench his own hand so tightly that it began to bleed. He thought that he would not accept this and that no matter what happened, he had to find a way to solve this and escape from that place. Suddenly, his consciousness was taken somewhere and a system screen appeared, saying that an extremely strong will to survive had been detected. Because of that, the return system had successfully awakened, and the host could bind the system sphere. When he read that message, he was shocked and thought that an entire year had passed, but his chance to turn the tables had finally arrived. As soon as he bound the sphere, the system changed, saying that it would ensure that whoever gives shall also receive. Any act of donation by the host could trigger a return with rewards of up to 10,000 times the value donated by him. The binding was successfully completed, and they also detected a delay in the host receiving the system. Because of that, they needed to issue compensation for all the time in which they had failed to appear. The reward was that the first return would be guaranteed at 10,000 times. He returned to his normal consciousness, and the fox, still laughing, said that the protagonist used his mouth to say no, but his body was always ready, which proved otherwise. The protagonist began to laugh, but the smile was not one of happiness. He thought that that damned bitch had made him give up his dignity and live his entire life like a dog serving them. He said that this time he would satisfy her properly. He pushed her back, making her even happier while wondering why they would not leave him in peace. The woman gave herself completely to him, asking her husband not to hold back and to do it however he wanted. The protagonist prepared to work hard while thinking that the heavens had given him a second chance, so he would take control of his own destiny with his own hands and tear apart anyone who stood in his way. The girl kept shouting that that night belonged only to the two of them. The next day, Zhao Mu was completely exhausted, and the fox was already standing. She pointed out that although he had only contributed a tiny bit of pure yang power, his performance last night had not been bad. As she left, she stressed that it was a pity those yang solidification pills were acting in his body. However, if he managed to survive, she would come back to look for him for more fun. Zhao Mu was still lying there, exhausted, like nothing more than a mummy. Suddenly, several system screens appeared, saying that his pure yang power had been harvested by the 9-charm heavenly fox, but it would return to him 10,000 times over. With that, he obtained the Crimson Yang sacred body. The system began distributing the rewards and started the fusion. His body was dominated by dense and extremely powerful energy. He began advancing rapidly, reaching the 10th layer of qi refinement, great completion. Zhao Mu felt his body boiling, as if qi were running through his veins, and questioned whether this was truly the power of a sacred body. However, he decided to get himself ready since now was not the time to attract so much attention. Experts were as common as clouds in the demonic sect of the sacred origin. So, if the sacred body he had just acquired were exposed, his fate would be even worse than serving as a cultivation vessel. Therefore, the only way to change all of this was to increase his strength as quickly as possible while no one was watching him. As he walked through the place, he thought that spirit stones were the foundation for advancing in cultivation, and that, with his Crimson Yang sacred body, he could even earn more by accepting private jobs from the local cultivators. But now, since he had the system, he needed to think a little bigger. Besides, most cultivators were not rich, and getting 3 or 4 spirit stones per visit was already considered very good. This made him wonder whether there was another way to earn spirit stones quickly. While he was thinking about that, the protagonist heard a noise. Wang Chan, an outer disciple of the Joyful Union sect, was cultivating. The protagonist looked at him and thought that when he had entered that place, Wang Chan had taken very good care of him, and now it was time to repay all that kindness. He thought that if he donated the 200 spirit stones he had saved over the past year, he should receive a decent return from the system. He threw a bag of stones at Wang Chan's head, and when Wang Chan saw what it was, he became happy, thinking that his relentless cultivation must have moved some important figure in the sect, who had decided to reward him with spirit stones. On the other hand, the protagonist activated a 500 times reward, which meant that 100,000 spirit stones were delivered to him. He could not believe that making money had been so simple and so fast. However, he was still greedy, thinking that 100,000 spirit stones were still nothing, because if he could trigger a 10,000 times return, it would be an incredible 2 million spirit stones. In the future, he would make those who humiliated him pay 1,000,000 times more. Suddenly, he had a great idea, because if he donated the spirit stones the system had given him again, perhaps he would activate another return. He threw some of his stones to test it, surprising Wang Chan, who looked to the side, saying that it was raining spirit stones again, and that he must have found a true guardian angel. Because of that, he needed to devote himself even more to his cultivation, and not disappoint the one helping him. But the protagonist on the other side was looking at the system and saw that it had no reaction at all. Apparently, he could not exploit a bug in the system like that. Suddenly, a woman approached, questioning whether the protagonist really had not died. As soon as he saw Luki, he was surprised. He greeted her respectfully because that cultivator was called Luki. She was also an outer sect disciple and cultivated the mystical art of the 9 yin. She had taken good care of him when he first entered as well, but after being warned by Chu Jiaoran, she had stopped appearing. Luki noticed that the protagonist's cultivation had increased a lot in a short time, and from the looks of it, his pure yang body was even more powerful than she had imagined. The protagonist thanked her for the praise, saying that it was only luck. She took the protagonist's hand, saying that this was not the time for small talk. She stressed that Zhao Ran was going into seclusion to try to advance in the next few days, so while she was busy, the protagonist should help her cultivate. She picked up her sword and told him to get on, but as soon as he climbed on, he held her waist, asking her to take it a little slower. Luki apologized and explained that she had not seen him in months, and his cultivation, along with his aura, had changed completely. She questioned whether he had obtained some benefit from that fox, Zhao Ran. The protagonist takes a deep breath, saying that that disgusting fox only knows how to take advantage of him, so how could he have gained anything from her? Luki agrees, saying that the demonic race is never kind, and if the protagonist stays with her, sooner or later she will suck away all the pure yang he has, leading him to death. But as soon as she manages to advance to the core formation realm, she will challenge Zhao Ran, and if she wins, the protagonist will belong to her from that moment on. Zhao Mu gets excited and hugs her even tighter, saying that he will take care of her to help with that advancement. Luki becomes a little embarrassed, saying that he is too close. However, he is not very happy with the phrase, "belong to me," because from the looks of it, all of them only see him as an object. Not long after, they arrive at the inner area of the demonic sect of the sacred origin. They enter the house, and she explains that she's about to advance to the core formation realm, and if the protagonist can help her, she will reward him with an origin nourishment pill. She asks him to stay there and wait for a while because she's going to take a bath, but the protagonist only sees an opportunity. Luki takes off her clothes and slowly enters the bathtub filled with hot water, saying that this time, no one will stop her, and that she will definitely succeed. Zhao Mu enters the bathroom and laughs, asking what she's going to succeed at. Luki becomes embarrassed and asks why he suddenly came in there. Zhao Mu explains that time is very precious, and that it is faster if they bathe together. While they cultivated, the protagonist praises her, saying that the mystical art of the 9 yin she possesses is truly impressive. Luki also praises him, saying that the pure yang body he possesses is also dominant, as well as very large. Sometime later, the two of them were completely exhausted, and the protagonist points out that he never imagined that, although she cultivated the mystical art of the 9 yin, deep down she was also just a Luki could barely breathe because he had worked very well during the cultivation between the two of them. With the rest of her strength, she says that it is enough for only him to know and that he does not need to say it out loud. The protagonist smiles and says that it is fine. Luki, a little upset, says that she is getting married next month and his name is Long Tianxiang. The protagonist should know him, and as soon as he hears that name, he is surprised because he advanced to the nascent soul realm before the age of 30 and is considered a supreme genius, something that only appears once every 1,000 years in the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin. He even comprehended sword intent on his own, making him a famous expert on the Pride of Heaven list. Zhao Mu becomes more worried and says that if someone of that level finds out that his wife is playing with another man's sword, it will mean death. Luki tells the protagonist not to worry since her fiancé, while cultivating an ancient sword manual, damaged his own meridians and ended up with his sword soft and unable to function. So as long as she does not say anything, no one will ever know. Besides, if she did not truly like the protagonist, she would never have given him her most precious thing, called the backdoor. Zhao Mu is touched by those words, kisses her, and says that her advancement is very close, so they need to keep working hard. She laughs and says that he is tireless. The next morning, the protagonist gets up and looks at the system, saying that it is coming. The system warns that his Crimson Yang power has been harvested, and the return is 800 times. With that, the strength of his Crimson Yang sacred body increased significantly. He managed to advance to the Foundation Establishment realm. He is surprised, thinking that in such a short time, he has already crossed the threshold of Foundation Establishment. At this pace, there will be no reason to fear anyone, not even Tianxiang and the Long family. He looks at Luki and asks her to wake up, questioning where his reward is. Luki, still exhausted from cultivating all night, hands him the pill with a trembling voice, saying that he is too incredible because she cannot take anymore and asks him to let her sleep just a little longer. He sees that he has received 10 Origin Nourishment pills, and from the looks of it, Luki is truly very generous. He thinks that he needs to donate pills anyway, so why not go a little further? He gives one pill to Luki and the system quickly detects that he donated a grade 2 Origin Nourishment pill. The return is 30 times, so he obtained a grade 3 Origin Nourishment pill. Zhao Mu is not very happy with that reward because only 30 times is far too weak. However, he still has 9 attempts left, and he does not need the 10,000 times return, but 1,000 times return is definitely possible to get. He gives her another pill, and this time, the return is activated at 3,000 times. The protagonist celebrates, saying that he finally got a good return. He obtained a grade 7 marrow cleansing pill. He examines the pill and sees that it is indeed a marrow cleansing pill, and that is a true treasure. Just like the Origin Nourishment pill, the marrow cleansing pill also strengthens the foundation, but that is only a secondary effect. Its true value lies in its ability to improve a cultivator's bone root aptitude. With his innate pure yang body, his aptitude is already considered excellent among mortals, but compared to the prodigies of the sect, his talent is barely worth mentioning. So, if he wants to go further and reach a new level, he needs to raise the limit of his potential. As soon as he takes the pill, he feels an absurd energy flowing through his body. He sits on the floor, thinking that he needs to refine it immediately. Not long after, the protagonist stands up, and Luki smells a strong odor, asking why he stinks so much and telling him to go take a bath. The protagonist says he will go immediately, heads to the bathroom, and starts washing himself. But Luki notices something and goes to him, asking whether he managed to advance to the Foundation Establishment realm and questioning whether the Origin Nourishment pills are really that effective. Still impressed, she keeps looking at his body and runs her hand over it, stressing that even reaching Foundation Establishment should not have purified his body to that extent. She asks if he took some other pill. The protagonist thinks that it would be complicated to explain and that if she found out he had obtained a marrow cleansing pill, it would not be good at all. Zhao Mu pushes her against the wall, saying that it was all thanks to the dual cultivation they did together, although it seems she still has not successfully formed her core. He moves closer, saying that it must have been because he did not work hard enough, so he would like to help her one more time, and this time it will be free. Luki, who is already exhausted, says that he is a maniac, questioning whether he wants to kill both of them from exhaustion, but the protagonist says that it is only to help her advance earlier. A few hours later, Luki could not even breathe properly, and the protagonist says goodbye to her, saying that she can take all the time she needs to advance, but he needs to leave. The system appears again, saying that his pure yang power was harvested by Luki and returned 10 times stronger, causing a small increase in his crimson yang power. The protagonist was moving with extreme ease, impressed by the power of Foundation Establishment, because his entire body felt far lighter than before. Once he obtains a flying sword, he will be able to cross the skies and travel the whole world. During the night at the outer sect market, Zhao Mu goes there to buy an item called Star Slayer, forged from meteoric iron that came from outer space. Engraved with the star voice formation, it absorbs the power of the stars to increase its lethality. That flying sword alone cost 30,000 spirit stones, so he becomes curious to know what multiplier he will receive once he manages to donate it. Suddenly, someone arrives and calls the protagonist a stallion, saying that he finally managed to find him. A giant man was standing in front of him and did not look very happy. Zhao Mu remembers that he is Niuti, an outer sect disciple and one of Zhaoran's most loyal suitors. He has already tried to cause trouble for the protagonist a few times, but Zhaoran noticed and stopped him in time. Currently, Niuti is a cultivator in the Foundation Establishment realm, who inherited the blood of a bull demon. His strength far surpasses that of a human cultivator in the same realm, so the protagonist thinks he is perfect for testing his current new power. Niuti grabs the protagonist by the shirt, completely furious, shouting that he heard he met Zhaoran again and asking whether that is true. Zhao Mu grabs his hand and asks what it has to do with him whether the two of them met or not. Niuti becomes furious and prepares to attack, saying that he will die right here and now, but the protagonist blocks his attack with only one hand, apologizing because he intends to keep that life in order to continue having fun with Zhaoran. The horned bull realizes that the protagonist has also reached the Foundation Establishment realm and releases even more of his strength, saying that the protagonist should not think the two of them are on the same level just because he advanced, because now he will see the true power of Lord Niuti. The protagonist dodges all the attacks while smiling, saying that his opponent is indeed very strong, but his speed leaves a lot to be desired. Niuti keeps attacking, telling him to shut up, because he will not be able to defeat him. Zhao Mu thinks that the Crimson Yang sacred body is truly extraordinary because he has only just advanced and can already easily deal with Niuti, who is among the top 100 of the outer sect. With one move, Zhao Mu throws his opponent off balance, saying that it is time to end this farce. He punches Niuti in the face, knocking him out instantly. Nudie's followers run over to him asking if he's alright and question how that brat suddenly became so strong. On top of that, they call the protagonist a little punk, asking how he dares to injure Boss Nudie because, from the looks of it, he has forgotten his family's status within the sect. Zhao Mu thanks them for reminding him. He takes out his flying sword and orders it to advance, striking a piece of wood beside the head of one of Nudie's followers. The man becomes frightened, questioning what that means. Zhao Mu explains that the flying sword is worth 30,000 spirit stones and should be enough to cover that idiot's medical expenses. The system detects it, saying that a grade 2 flying sword has been donated and the return is 1,000 times. He obtained a grade 5 flying sword called the Heavenly Star Talisman. He looks at it and thinks that grade 5 is not much, but it will do. Nudie's two subordinates notice that the protagonist has his back turned and think they can attack him quickly, but Zhao Mu turns around with full force, saying that they are reckless fools, so he should not be blamed for acting in self-defense. But before they can do anything, someone strikes them from behind. The two question who attacked them. An irritated woman says that, from the looks of it, a bunch of useless thieves still has the audacity to play the victim. She stresses that she saw with her own eyes that they were the ones who attacked first. She is Mu Juling. She walks over to the protagonist and starts scolding him, asking if he does not think he is being far too careless, because she had already warned him before that when dealing with enemies, he needed to pull evil out by the roots. The two who were beaten look at her and question what kind of arrogance that is and who the hell she thinks she is, because from the looks of it, she does not know who their boss is. Juling shouts that her name is Mu Juling. As soon as the two hear that name, they start running, saying that she is the senior sister of the inner sect, so they need to run and not let her record their faces. The other shouts that Boss Nudie forced them to do that, so it has nothing to do with them. Juling is impressed to see that they are nothing but a bunch of cowards. She goes back to scolding the protagonist and he becomes confused, asking what he did wrong. Juling approaches him, asking if he has already forgotten, because she had said that if anything went wrong, all he had to do was say her name. Juling, worried, says that luckily she was nearby. Otherwise, if he died, who would she marry in the future? The protagonist thinks that this girl has had her eyes on him since the day he entered the sect, and this time, it is not because of his pure young power, but because of his good looks. The demonic sect of the Sacred Origin has a terrifying and cruel woman named Mu Juling, but those guys probably never imagined that she had such a cute and gentle side. The protagonist asks her to calm down because he is not as easy to kill as she thinks. Juling insists, saying that her future husband cannot take even the slightest risk, so he needs to go with her. The two start flying, and the protagonist is surprised because flying at high altitude without using a sword is a technique that only core formation cultivators can master. So what level does that girl truly possess right now? Not long after, they arrive at another place, and she takes them down to the ground. As soon as they arrive, the protagonist is surprised by the amount of spiritual energy, because that is probably the central sanctuary of the demonic sect of the sacred origin. Juling asks him to come in because that is her home. The protagonist is surprised and thinks that perhaps she might be a personal disciple. As soon as he enters, he looks around and asks if she really lives there. Juling explains that when she truly wants to rest, she goes to that place to read some books and sleep in, so she does not appear there very often. She throws herself onto the bed and asks what he is doing standing there, telling him to hurry up and move. Jiao Mu asks her not to play any tricks because his self-control is very limited. She becomes embarrassed, saying that he is a shameless womanizer, and asks what kind of nonsense he is thinking at that moment. She picks up some books and throws them to him. As soon as the protagonist sees the titles, he realizes that one book is about the true chapter of sword control and the other is the One Chi Mystic Heart Sword Art. He is surprised, asking how she knew he wanted to cultivate sword control. Juling stresses that he had just advanced to the Foundation Establishment realm and immediately ran to the market to buy a flying sword, so it was obvious that he wanted to learn sword control. She throws a sword to the protagonist, saying that it is also a gift. It is a grade 4 flying sword with the ice attribute called Frostblade. Juling takes a deep breath, saying that she can feel that the protagonist's inner pure yang has been quite restless lately, and that sword is perfect for suppressing the evil fire he is feeling. That way, he will be able to stop thinking about those things all day long. Jiao Mu thanks her, saying that she is very thoughtful. Juling asks him to stay there over the next few days to focus on sword control, and she will take care of the rest for him. Now that he has advanced to the Foundation Establishment realm, he no longer needs to be a servant disciple. Later, she will have someone update his Jade tablet to the outer sect ranking. The protagonist is surprised by how many things she can do and asks who exactly she is. Juling simply smiles, saying that she is the person the protagonist will end up marrying in the future. As soon as she closes the door, he smiles, saying that this girl really knows how to flirt with a man. But now it is time to forget all of that because cultivating sword control is the most important thing for him at that moment. The protagonist concentrates and begins cultivating, but quickly becomes exhausted, questioning whether he had not already used the marrow cleansing pill to improve his aptitude. So why is learning sword control still so difficult for him? This makes him wonder if it is possible that the marrow cleansing pill only improved his body but did not increase his comprehension. He remains confused, wondering what he needs to do now because he has a system, but if he gets stuck in cultivation due to a lack of comprehension, he will end up crying himself to death without being able to do anything. He sees an animal beside him and thinks that if even primordial yang counts as a donation, then comprehension should also trigger a return from the system. With a frightening smile on his face, he tells the little animal that it looks very bored, so maybe he can teach it a bit of multiplication. After teaching the animal a little, the system appears, saying that the protagonist enlightened a demonic beast and transmitted knowledge, so he received a 100 times return. The host's comprehension increased significantly. The protagonist celebrates when he sees that his idea really worked. After his comprehension improves, he tries cultivating again and finally manages to make good progress. He begins controlling his sword, saying that this is not bad at all. Now he can instantly understand techniques that once seemed like a complete mystery. Even so, this small leap in comprehension is far from enough in that world. Thinking about it carefully, for a transmigrator, this level is clearly not enough. He looks at the animal again and holds it, saying that it is eager to learn, so the teacher will teach a geometry lesson. He continues teaching the little beast, and the system calculates that the protagonist taught calculus, and the return is 100 times. As a result, his comprehension increased drastically. The host's current comprehension has reached the maximum limit of the current cultivation stage, so it cannot be increased any further. The protagonist is surprised to see that there really is a ceiling for comprehension, so that means that with his current level, understanding techniques should not be a problem for him. He quickly starts learning some techniques using the Vajra Fist, the Crimson Thunder art of the Shun Wind, and even the divination of the 3 talents and 6 destinies. However, he becomes a little discouraged because they are all unranked yellow-grade techniques, far too basic for him at his current level. Even so, he managed to memorize everything. If he copies them and gives them to others later, he should be able to get a good batch of returns. The animal approaches the protagonist with a bone in its mouth. He starts petting the beast, asking if it really wants to give him that bone. He takes the bone in his hand and thanks it, saying that he will make soup with it later. However, he senses a lingering energy in that bone, and when he reads what is written on it, he realizes that it is the chaotic, dark, mystic art. He sits down on the ground again because he never imagined that little guy would immediately hand him a technique. The system warns that the chaotic, dark, mythic art has been detected, and auto-learning is in progress. This creates a severe headache for the protagonist, making him vomit blood. He He realizes that his comprehension has already reached the limit of the Foundation Establishment realm, but even so, he still cannot understand that technique. This means it might be an Earth-grade technique or perhaps even a Heavenly-grade technique. Juling returns and asks him what happened. She runs over to him, seeing that he is feeling unwell, and says it is all her fault because she gave him a technique that was far too difficult right from the start. Zhao Mu tries to explain that this was not exactly what happened, but she insists, saying that cultivation cannot be rushed. Because of that, she prepared some food, and they should rest a little while they eat. To help him as much as possible, she says she will feed him and asks him to open his mouth. He accepts the food and thinks that since she is there, it means he can try to make progress. He picks up the bone and hands it to her, saying that he will give that technique to her and asking her to see if it is good enough. Juling is surprised and asks where he got that technique. The protagonist explains that a small beast gave it to him, but the content is too profound, and he cannot cultivate it, so he thought it would be better to pass it on to her. The system detects it and says that he gifted an Earth-grade technique called the Chaotic Dark Mystic Art, and the return was 60 times. He obtained an upper-level Earth-grade technique, the Pure Yang Dark Mystic Art. In addition, the system also detected compatibility between the Pure Yang Dark Mystic Art and the host's Crimson Yang Sacred Body, so he can start the fusion immediately if he wants. But the protagonist thinks it is not good to do that now since she is there with him, because he does not know how long this fusion will take and cannot raise suspicion with Juling nearby. But Juling stands up angrily, saying that that idiotic dog stole her technique again and almost destroyed her husband's future. The protagonist asks what she meant by destroying his future. Juling explains that, fortunately, the protagonist did not force himself to cultivate it because his constitution is pure yang, while that dark mystic art carries chaos attributes. This directly conflicts with his pure yang body, and if he had insisted, his meridians could have exploded, and he would have died instantly. The protagonist finally understands why he could not comprehend that technique. This means it was not a lack of comprehension, but an incompatibility between the technique and his constitution. Juling stresses that the protagonist's constitution is special, and very few techniques are compatible with him, which means she needs some time to gather them. Until then, he needs to practice basic introductory techniques and accumulate experience, because that is the correct path. Zhao Mu points out that she is being far too good to him and asks what exactly she is plotting. Juling asks if her intention is not obvious enough, saying that he only needs to submit to her, because if he becomes her Tao companion, she guarantees him a life of luxury in the demonic sect of the sacred origin, and no one will dare touch a single hair on his head. She sits on his lap, but someone shouts, saying that this is absurd. An overwhelming pressure strikes the house, completely destroying it. The two become worried, and the protagonist looks at a woman who is flying, questioning what that oppressive aura is and who that woman really is. Juling asks her master why she is there, which leaves the protagonist a little surprised. The master asks if she is interrupting those two's fun. Juling apologizes, saying that she would never dare do such a thing. Her master walks over to her, saying that she is the disciple she values the most. So her intention has always been to prepare her to inherit her position as the sect's saintess. But just look at everything she is doing. As if neglecting her own cultivation was not enough, she even hides a servant disciple in her quarters, flirting and having fun as if nothing matters. Zhao Mu is surprised to learn that the sect's saintess is Juling's master, which explains why she has always moved around with so much confidence. Juling kneels in front of her master, begging for forgiveness and admitting that she was wrong. The saintess picks up a sword, saying that since her disciple has acknowledged her mistake, she truly deserves a second chance. She throws the sword to the ground, ordering Juling to immediately eliminate the servant disciple with her own hands and cut off this emotional attachment once and for all. After that, she can return and speak with her master at Purple Cloud Peak to spend 30 years in secluded cultivation. Juling refuses to do it, trying to explain to her master that this has nothing to do with the protagonist, and that if her master forces her to do it, then her Tao heart will be affected, and her cultivation will never advance again. The saintess asks if that is some kind of threat and begins placing even stronger pressure on the two of them. The protagonist realizes that this saintess is truly thinking about killing her own disciple. He tries to protect Juling without hesitation. As soon as he touches her body, Juling asks what he is doing. The protagonist asks her to absorb the spiritual power he has in his body. The saintess is a little surprised, questioning whether he could be the pure yang body, but after analyzing him a little more carefully, she realizes she was wrong. Because in truth, the protagonist has awakened the Crimson Yang sacred body. Zhao Mu helps Juling recover and says that this is exactly what should be expected of the saintess because her eyes are truly sharp. The saintess stresses that the Crimson Yang sacred body is extremely rare, which means the man Juling chose truly has enormous potential. Juling becomes so excited when she hears that he has the Crimson Yang sacred body that she says if she had known that earlier, she would have tied him up and turned him into a stepping stone. The Saintess calls the two of them to attention. Juling apologizes, saying that she just said something foolish without thinking. The protagonist also tries to calm things down, saying that Juling was only joking. The Saintess eventually gives in and says that it is fine. For the sake of her disciple, she will spare the protagonist's life, but he needs to return to the outer sect and focus on his cultivation until he reaches the nascent soul realm, because before that, he does not even need to come looking for Juling again. As soon as they leave, the protagonist composes himself and thinks that that power is truly terrifying. If the Saintess wanted to eliminate him, a single thought would be enough, and he would already be dead. Now he finally realizes that he needs to become much stronger than he currently is. Not long after, in the servants' courtyard, the protagonist enters his house, saying that this trip was risky, but at least he managed to obtain an upper-level Earth-grade technique and a grade 4 flying sword. He asks the system to start the fusion and concentrates. As energy flows through his body, he thinks that the cultivation speed is absurd, and perhaps the combined effect of the pure Yang dark mystic art with the Crimson Yang sacred body is causing all of this. The system appears with an error warning saying that insufficient spiritual energy has been detected in the environment, so the system asks if he wishes to automatically absorb spirit stones for cultivation. With no other choice, the protagonist says yes, since he had earned all those spirit stones without any effort. The system starts the cultivation again, and the protagonist prepares himself because spiritual energy is abundant within his body. Sometime later, he looks to the side and sees that he has already spent 70,000 spirit stones he had saved in a single night. However, he managed to reach the third stage of foundation establishment in a single night, and that is not bad at all. But now his next step needs to be figuring out how to make money again. Before he can do anything, 3 people appear at his door. The leader of the 3 is a servant disciple at the 8th stage of Qi refinement named Hu Qiang. He starts mocking him, saying that he heard Zhao Ran gave the protagonist a bunch of benefits. He releases his aura, asking if the protagonist is not going to show them a little consideration. Zhao Mu remembers that Qiang relies on his decent cultivation to intimidate the weak and oppress others in the servant's courtyard, acting like a true tyrant. Once, a newly arrived servant disciple dared to talk back and was beaten to death that very same night. The protagonist curses at him, saying that he lives by robbing others, so he must have gathered a lot of spirit stones. Qiang, angry at being insulted, asks what it matters how much he has gathered and tries to attack, saying that the protagonist is asking for a beating. But Zhao Mu dodges the attack, saying that he is far too slow and asks if he really thinks he can hit someone with that ridiculous speed. Because of that, he needs to learn how to hit a person. Zhao Mu punches him, asking him to watch carefully and learn next time. With just one punch, Qiang is nearly knocked out, and his disciples ask if he is alright. Qiang asks if the protagonist really advanced to the foundation establishment realm. Zhao Mu starts laughing, asking if that is not already obvious enough. Qiang realizes that he will have no chance alone and calls his 2 companions, telling them not to just stand there and to attack together. The 2 try to attack the protagonist, but he dodges again with ease. The other people watching are impressed because they did not expect the protagonist to advance to foundation establishment so quickly. However, a girl points out that even so, the protagonist has only just broken through, so facing so many Qi realm cultivators at once will still be complicated. Wang Chan, worried about his friend, asks the protagonist to be careful, but with a single move, Zhao Mu throws his 2 opponents far away, telling them to get out of his sight immediately. Qiang, who had transformed, tries to launch a sneak attack, but the protagonist turns around laughing and sends him flying with a punch. Qiang still insists on saying that the protagonist, but Zhao Mu walks over to him and tells him to shut his mouth immediately, crushing him into the ground. Because of this, he was being treated like a true king for saving everyone from that heartless tyrant. Zhao Mu takes Qiang's spirit stones and calls everyone over, saying that the spirit stones that piece of trash used to steal from people will all be returned to their rightful owners today. He throws all the spirit stones into the crowd, and the people begin grabbing as many as possible, wishing the protagonist a long and prosperous life. The system says that he gifted everyone 9,000 spirit stones, and the return was 1,000 times that amount. Because of that, he obtained 9 million spirit stones. Zhao Mu laughs, thinking that from the looks of it, he will not run out of spirit stones for a good while. He walks over to Wang Chan, saying that he has always taken care of the protagonist since he entered the sect, so he would like to give him a gift. Wang Chan is surprised and asks if that is a Qi refinement pill. He refuses to accept it, saying that it is far too precious to be given as a gift, but Zhao Mu shouts for him to stop that and swallow the pill already, throwing it into his friend's mouth. The The system detects that he gifted someone a grade 1 Qi refinement pill, and the return was 100 times. Because of that, he obtained a grade 2 foundation establishment pill. Wang Chan tells Zhao Mu that he is truly surprised by his friend's growth. However, he needs to warn him that the forces behind Qiang and Niuti are not small at all, so it would be better for him to join the outer sect quickly and find a master. The protagonist says that this is exactly what he intends to do. Not long after, inside the outer sect management hall, the outer sect manager, Jiang Dingkun, was preparing something in a huge cauldron. Zhao Mu enters the hall and greets the manager. Dingkun is distracted by the protagonist's presence and ends up misjudging the amount of fire, causing an explosion. Dingkun becomes irritated, saying that it is the protagonist's fault for disturbing the spiritual state he was in. Now, he has wasted an entire furnace of violet chi pills and orders the protagonist to leave immediately. Zhao Mu thinks that the manager clearly ruined the pills on purpose just now, and judging by the heat, he was not even refining the precious violet chi pills. So why is he making things difficult for the protagonist out of nowhere? Someone must be pulling the strings behind all of this. Dingkun continues acting arrogantly, asking why the protagonist is still standing there, since he said he does not want to see his face. Zhao Mu asks the manager not to be so hasty. He offers 50,000 spirit stones for the trouble he just caused. Immediately, the manager's attitude changes, calling the protagonist little brother and asking if he is there to pick up the jade tablet of an outer sect disciple because he will handle it right away. Zhao Mu thanks the manager for his efficient work. However, he still has one question and asks who is trying to stop him from becoming an outer sect disciple. Dingkun says that he only accepts money to solve problems and would not dare betray someone else. Zhao Mu says that he understands the message and asks what would happen if, by chance, he added all those spirit stones. Dingkun asks him to come closer. He draws a fox on the ground and Zhao Mu becomes even more irritated, seeing that it is that idiot Chu Jiaoran who is obstructing his progress. She has a high status within the outer sect and her spies and informants are everywhere, and if he keeps wandering around the outer sect carelessly, sooner or later he will end up in her hands again. The protagonist thanks the manager for the warning, but he says that he said nothing. With everything settled, he picks up his sword, thinking that he needs to go find Luki because maybe he can hide in her house for a while. But as soon as he approaches her house, he notices two men leaving her room. Tianxiang from the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin, 5th place on the Pride of Heaven list and Luki's future husband, was together with the 12th elder of the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin, Lu Haikong. The elder starts laughing, saying that now that Luki has finally reached the golden core stage, perhaps it is time for them to talk about the marriage between the two. Tianxiang feels flattered and says that once he manages to win first place in this year's great hunting competition, he will marry the young lady, saying that he will eagerly await the great day. The protagonist, who is watching, becomes irritated when he sees that it was only that cuckold Tianxiang. As soon as they leave, the protagonist walks to her door asking if she is there. Luqi opens the door, happy to see him, and the protagonist enters, asking if Tianxiang came there again to talk about marriage. She becomes irritated and reprimands the protagonist, telling him not to say that guy's name in front of her because she does not want to hear it. She hugs him and changes the subject, asking what he is doing there on his own. Zhao Mu explains that all of this is that disgusting fox's fault because she is making things difficult for him in the outer sect. Luqi points out that she has finally advanced to the core formation stage, and as soon as she stabilizes her cultivation in a few days, she will challenge Jiaoran. However, she needs to thank the protagonist for advancing so quickly to the core formation stage, because without him, that would not have been possible. She throws herself on top of the protagonist, and he says that if she keeps going like this, he will not be able to hold back his blazing yang energy. Luqi asks who said he had to hold anything back. She tears her own clothes, saying that she wants him to help her cultivate immediately. The two begin cultivating, and the next day she is exhausted again. The system detects that his blazing yang energy was plundered, so a 50 times return was activated, and his blazing yang energy increased slightly. He questions why it was so little, and the system explains that he has already been plundered by Luqi several times, so the return rewards gradually decrease. He understands that if he keeps investing his time in a single person, the multiplier will continue falling more and more. So maybe if he looks for a few more cultivators to cultivate with, he can increase the system's reward rate. This means that he is indeed on the right path, but now is not the time to think about that because he needs to speed up and become stronger, since that is what matters at the moment. He begins cultivating and quickly advances to the 4th stage of a foundation establishment. However, his spirit stones run out too quickly, and he can barely reach the 5th stage. From the looks of it, that sacred body consumes far too many resources, so he will have to gather some more. Suddenly, he sees a shadow outside and opens the window, asking what is going on. but he comes face to face with the Saintess and becomes frightened. The Saintess introduces herself, saying that her name is An Zixuan, and asks him to call her that from now on. Zhao Mu asks what brings the young lady there just to see him. Zixuan keeps looking at the protagonist and touches his abdomen, saying that she wants his pure yang energy to assist her cultivation. Zhao Mu pushes her back and, with all due respect, says that she cannot play around with these things, because techniques at her current level take a very long time to evolve in the later stages, so she certainly does not need his help. Zixuan becomes furious, saying that he is insolent and uses her powers to push him onto the bed. The protagonist cannot move because of the absurd spiritual pressure on him. The Saintess says that now is not the time for useless talk, so he should only answer yes or no. The protagonist says that if she is asking with so much affection and politeness, then he is willing to do anything. He thinks that it is better to give in now and survive, because one day he will still have that woman in the palm of his hand. He looks at her, saying that he needs to know which position she prefers so they can cultivate in the best way. Zixuan becomes a little embarrassed by that question and asks him not to ask things he should not. She opens a portal and takes the two of them to the Purple Heaven Grotto. She asks him to follow her because this is the Purple Heaven Grotto, where she cultivates in seclusion, and no one will disturb them there. Zhao Mu starts unbuttoning his pants, and the Saintess becomes embarrassed, asking what he is doing. The protagonist says that he is trying to cooperate with her harvest for cultivation. Zixuan explains that he does not need to take off his clothes because she has her own methods for doing that. The protagonist laughs, saying that he understands now and that, from the looks of it, the young lady prefers to take the initiative because he has known some women like that before. However, based on his experience, the effects only reach their maximum when both sides cooperate. Zixuan ties his mouth and binds him to a log, asking him to close his eyes and stay silent, because that way he can assist her in cultivation. She begins removing her clothes slowly, saying that if he does not want to cooperate this way, he can simply die. Zhao Mu agrees, and she throws him into the water, saying that he needs to wash his body properly. The protagonist says that he will do as the Saintess wishes. As soon as he finishes bathing, he begins drying himself, asking if he is dreaming, but the Saintess tells him to shut up. She throws him onto a bed. Zhao Mu is surprised, thinking that he never imagined the Saintess would be so dominant, and that there is no way to resist this charm, but suddenly he feels someone licking his face, and when he opens his eyes, he sees two girls and asks where the Saintess is. The girl in white and pink is called An Lele, and the other in white and blue is called An Yuan Yuan. The two ask him what is going on and whether they are not beautiful enough for him. Yuan Yuan explains that the two of them are puppets created by their master, responsible for absorbing the protagonist's Crimson Yang power. Lele warns that the protagonist must cooperate perfectly because the two of them will finish in 1 hour at most. The protagonist feels underestimated and says that using human tools to take his Crimson Yang power and in just 1 hour is absurd. He asks who they think he is. Zhao Mu throws Yuan Yuan onto the bed, saying that he will show his true strength. Lele grabs the protagonist's arm, telling him to be a little gentler with her sister, but he only looks at her, and she lets go of his arm. Only the screams of the two could be heard. A few hours later, the Saintess was looking at the protagonist, questioning how much longer that beast would continue. They finally finish, and the two were completely spent, unable to move. The protagonist enters the hot spring and thinks that this thermal spring really replenishes his Crimson Yang power because they cultivated for quite a while and he is still full of energy. The two, having difficulty walking since some parts of their bodies were sore, go to the Saintess and kneel, offering the power and saying that they deserve death for their crimes because the protagonist's constitution is extremely dominant, which is why it took so long. Zixuan becomes a little embarrassed and says that she watched everything and that it was not their fault. She asks the two to leave the Crimson Yang fluid behind and go treat their injuries. They bow and thank her for her understanding. While the protagonist was getting dressed, the Saintess approaches and he asks how he did. She says it was more or less acceptable. Zixuan hands the protagonist his rewards, and he is extremely surprised because he has just received 10 million spirit stones and 4 bottles of supreme-grade Foundation establishment pills. He thanks her, saying that this is exactly what should be expected of the Saintess, such a generous person. Zixuan looks at the protagonist and asks why he is still standing there, because he can leave now. However, the protagonist warns that, in truth, if she really wants to absorb his Crimson Yang power, they should dual cultivate directly, because the effects would be far better. Zixuan likes the conversation, but becomes embarrassed and opens the gate, sending him back while telling him to get out because she does not want to keep looking at him right now. He is quickly sent back to Luki's house. Seeing that he has returned to the exact same place, he realizes that the Saintess's methods are truly profound and unpredictable. The system says that he contributed a huge amount of Crimson Yang power to Zixuan, so the Crimson Yang sacred body was significantly enhanced. He quickly refines all the energy he has just gained and becomes happy, because it was exactly as he had thought. Changing partners really does yield more rewards. Besides, as long as the great Saintess needs his Crimson Yang power, he will definitely have a guaranteed place within the sect. Meanwhile, in Purple Heaven, the Saintess places the protagonist's Crimson Yang fluid on a plate and stares at it, thinking that she hopes that boy's fluid will not disappoint her. She remembers everything she saw in front of her, but tries to avoid her thoughts, reducing the protagonist to a mere cultivation vessel, so he cannot distract her from her cultivation. Yuan, together with her sister, who was watching that, says that the Saintess really did get distracted while cultivating. Lele wonders whether it is possible that that boy's Crimson Yang fluid has some kind of side effect. The next day, Luki wakes up and looks at the protagonist cultivating. She walks over to him, saying that he woke up very early to cultivate, which means he's becoming more and more dedicated. Zhao Mu says that, by chance, he felt a slight sense of inspiration to advance. She throws herself on top of him again, saying that, now that his realm has increased, he could join her in challenging the Path to Heaven. The Path to Heaven is an ancient secret realm of the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin. In total, there are 12 levels. Normally, anyone who can reach the 3rd level is already qualified to enter the top 100 of the Outer Sect's Pride of Heaven list. That is because starting from the 3rd level, great demons of the Golden Core realm begin to appear. Luki comments that Zhaoran occupies 9th place on the Outer Sect's Pride of Heaven list and can remain on the 4th level for the time it takes an incense stick to burn. The protagonist says that she does not need to do all of this for him. Luki explains that, in truth, she is not doing all of this just for him, but also for herself. Everyone says that Disgusting Fox is the cultivator with the greatest potential in the Outer Sect, but she disagrees, because she truly wants to see, in the end, whether humans or demons will prevail in that world. The protagonist thinks that although the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin treats humans and demons equally, there is still a difference between them, and conflicts and disputes never stop. Zhao Mu eventually agrees and says that, now that he is also an Outer Sect disciple, they can go together. She smiles and says, that is great. But before they can enter, some people were coming out. A man says that he failed again because the monsters on the 3rd level of the Path to Heaven are absurdly strong. Other young people wonder how those prodigies managed to pass through it, but the chubbier one says that this is exactly why they are called the Pride of Heaven. They bow to Niuti, saying that he is incredible because after challenging the Path to Heaven this time, his ranking rose to 47th, and at this rate he will certainly enter the top 10 of the Pride of Heaven. Nudie laughs, saying that obviously it was talent and effort. Currently, he is ranked 79th on the Pride of Heaven list, but when he looks to the side, he sees Zhaoran extremely nervous. She shouts, telling him not to forget that she was the one who helped him advance his cultivation, so he needs to hurry up and finish the task she gave him. Niuti says that he will do it immediately. He walks over to Luki, saying that she is not going to climb the Path to Heaven with that pretty little boy who lives off others. Luki mocks the situation, asking if the protagonist really is just a pretty little boy, because she heard that he had been beaten by that pretty little boy. Nudie becomes furious, saying that the protagonist caught him off guard in the middle of the chaos. The protagonist simply ignores him, saying that a loser should not make a scene because they still need to challenge the Path to Heaven. Nudie becomes so irritated that he tries to attack him, but the protagonist dodges the attack, saving Luki. Nudie throws a token onto the ground and a circle appears, saying that the Outer Sect disciple Nuti has challenged him to a duel, so he must choose whether to accept or refuse. That barrier no longer allows anyone else to cross, but Luki asks the protagonist not to accept because that guy's cultivation has increased a lot, so he should not fall for the provocation and lose his head. Zhao Mu asks her to calm down because he knows exactly what he is doing. The protagonist walks over to his opponent, saying that he would like to make this a little more interesting. Niuti agrees, saying that if he happens to lose, he will return that grade 2 flying sword to the protagonist. Zhao Mu says that is fine, and in that case, he will bet the storage ring on his finger. The challenge is confirmed, and everyone is shocked by a duel in the square, because they heard that Niuti is fighting that pretty little boy from the servants' courtyard. Besides, the protagonist has just been promoted to Outer Sect Disciple, and they say he has a pure yang body, and that all the Outer Sect cultivators who practice the divine art of the 9 yin have already had relations with him, which even makes them jealous. Luki becomes jealous and furious when she hears that kind of comment. Zhaoran takes advantage of the situation to provoke her even more, and says that she always wondered why the protagonist was distracted whenever she harvested his essence. So it was because of a lover like Luki. But this can also be seen as something good, because the best fate for a bird that insists on flying away is to be strangled by her own hands. She asks Newty to use all his strength and not worry about his life or death, because he must not waste the opportunity she had given him. Newty asks her not to worry because he will never be capable of disappointing her. He releases his strength and starts heading toward the protagonist. Luki becomes worried and asks him to be careful, but Newty attacks with everything he has, causing a huge explosion. People comment that those are shadow steps, and Newty was already famous for his strength. Now that he has mastered shadow steps, his power has increased even more, and this is exactly what is expected of someone in the top 100 of the Pride of Heaven. From the looks of it, the protagonist is finished, and this may become the fastest duel in the history of the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin. Jiaoran only laughs, saying that it is a pity, because if the protagonist had simply been a good little dog for her, maybe he would have lived a little longer. But before she can leave, she starts hearing some people impressed, questioning how that is possible, and asking if the protagonist really blocked the attack, because they cannot believe what their eyes are seeing. Zhao Mu was holding Newty by the horns with extreme ease. The stupid bull asks how that is possible, and the protagonist mocks him, asking if he forgot to eat, because if that is all he can do, the fight will not be any fun. Jiaoran tells Newty to stop being an idiot and immediately take the pill she had given him. Newty accepts the mission without hesitation, saying that the protagonist forced him to do this. As soon as he bites the pill, a huge amount of energy begins to surge out of his body, forcing the protagonist to step back. Newty promises that now he will show the strongest form he possesses, and the bull demon form is activated. The protagonist is impressed to see that he has indeed transformed completely into a bull. Luki argues with Jiaoran, saying that she really is despicable, because she cannot believe she helped that guy cheat in the duel. But Jiaoran continues mocking the situation, asking how that can be considered cheating. That is a demon spirit pill which can temporarily stimulate the power of the demonic race's bloodline. That power already exists inside him because he belongs to the demonic race, and the pill is only awakening the power that already exists within him. Newty prepares to attack, saying that this time he will tear the protagonist to pieces using Savage Bull Impact. The spectators are impressed to see that Guy is far too fast because they can barely follow his movements. But to the protagonist, that is still far too slow. He manages to dodge the attack, but he still suffers a small scratch on his arm. He realizes that even without touching him, the pressure of the wind alone was enough to cause a small wound. Newty slams his head into the wall, making the entire gate tremble. People say that Guy's strength is absurd. Newty pulls himself together and tries to attack again, saying that this time he will not escape. But Zhao Mu is already losing patience and starts smiling, saying that his opponent really does have quite a lot of strength, but it is not enough. With a single blow, he breaks his opponent's horn and lands a direct punch, sending him flying far away. Jiaoran is shocked and questions how that can be possible, because the protagonist defeated the demonized Newty with a single blow. She wonders if the pure Yang body is really that powerful, and when he advanced to Foundation Establishment, the force of that punch was even more absurd than Newty's. Luki hugs the protagonist, saying that he really is incredible and that, from the looks of it, she was a little mistaken about his true strength. Zhao Mu tells her to restrain herself because a lot of people are watching. Jiaoran, on the other hand, looks at Newty, saying that he is nothing but useless trash, and orders the other subordinates to take him away. But the protagonist asks them to wait a moment. The three prepare to fight, saying that he has already crushed their boss, so what else does he want to do? Zhao Mu takes out a bag of spirit stones, saying that he is a very reasonable man and that there are 10,000 spirit stones inside. They can consider it payment for his medical expenses this time. The subordinates say that the protagonist is far too arrogant and cannot believe he is humiliating their boss like that. On the other hand, the other two say that if they had received 10,000 spirit stones, they would also accept being beaten. The system says that the protagonist donated 10,000 spirit stones, and the return is 100 times. Because of that, he obtained 1 million spirit stones. He becomes irritated that it was only 100 times. Jiaoran walks over to him while clapping, saying that he did very well and that this is exactly what should be expected of the man she had set her eyes on. As a true lady, she likes the protagonist even more now, so if he returns to her side now, she will give him anything he wants. But Zhao Mu slaps her hand away and says that she is not even worthy of standing in his presence. She becomes extremely irritated and releases her aura, but Luki intervenes, saying that the protagonist is a human being, not merchandise she can throw away whenever she wants. Besides, she promises that she will challenge the path to heaven and surpass Jiaoran's ranking. After that, she will challenge her fairly, and she will pay for every bit of harm she caused the protagonist. Before they enter, Zhao Mu thanks her, saying that what she just said was very nice to hear. She laughs, saying that it is very good to see that he liked it. The two enter together to challenge the path to heaven, and Jiaoran becomes furious outside, promising that she will never let the two of them live in peace. People comment that Jiaoran occupies ninth place on the Outer Sex Pride of Heaven list, being a rising star of the Fox tribe. On the other hand, Luki is the granddaughter of the 12th elder. Her status is noble, and her beauty is no less than Jiaoran's. Even so, the two beauties are fighting over Jiao Mu. In the sacred land of the demonic sect inside the Nine Dragon Sword Tomb, Tianxiang was cultivating when he sensed someone's presence. He attacks, cutting through everything in front of him, but sees that he did not eliminate the person. Nao Ao, who had been watching everything that happened before, goes to Tianxiang, saying that the outer sect is filled with rumors that Luki is fighting with Jiaoran over a pretty boy. Since he was worried that this might end up affecting Tianxiang's reputation, he came to report everything personally, but Tianxiang becomes extremely irritated, asking if that guy really came there to interrupt his secluded cultivation over such a trivial matter. Niu Ao becomes frightened and steps back, asking Tianxiang not to take offense, because it was an intrusion on his part and so he will withdraw immediately. But Tianxiang asks him to wait. Niu Ao bows, trembling with fear, asking if there is anything else. Suddenly he receives a powerful attack that sends him flying away. Niu Ao is frightened and asks why he was attacked. Tianxiang tells him to stop struggling and take a look at his chest. As soon as Niu Ao looks at his chest, he notices that a mark has appeared. Tianxiang explains that this is a strand of sword intent he had condensed. Niu Ao, still lost, asks what he means by that. Tianxiang stresses that there are always ants who do not know their place, so Niu Ao needs to go there and get rid of that ant for him. Niu Ao feels that his power has increased and thanks him for it. Meanwhile, on the path to heaven, Luki explains that the path to heaven automatically records how many floors a disciple can climb. And since this is the protagonist's first time there, they will be separated. Jiao Mu says that he understands, but the two become a little shy, and Luki kisses Jiao Mu for good luck. She says goodbye, asking him to be careful, but the protagonist keeps smiling, saying that the one who should be careful there is her. He continues walking alone and suddenly encounters several enormous monsters right in front of him. All of them begin attacking simultaneously, but the protagonist manages to dodge all their attacks. Surprised by this, he thinks that he did not expect Foundation Establishment Stage demonic beasts to appear on the first floor of the path to heaven. Newly arrived Outer Sect disciples would not be able to pass through this. The monsters continue attacking, but the protagonist dodges all their attacks again, saying that now it is his turn to play a little. He advances against the demonic beasts, and they become frightened by such tremendous strength. With a single blow, he manages to defeat all three monsters at once, saying that this was far too easy. The path to heaven announces that level 1 has been completed, and he can choose one of 3 rewards. He looks at the upper-level yellow-gray technique called Blazing Flame Palm. He becomes happy with this, because he was just worried about not having a combat technique compatible with the Crimson Yang sacred body. And this was the perfect moment for this technique to appear in his life. Without thinking twice, he chooses the technique and immediately begins studying it. First, he needs to guide the true solar fire into his body, then reinforce the power of the palm technique with the strength of the radiant sun. He tests whether he can use his new ability and easily destroys a pile of stones around him. Seeing that he has already mastered that technique, he says that now it is time to go to level 2. Meanwhile, on the 3rd level, Luki was also fighting, giving it everything she had and quickly manages to clear that stage. Outside, people were looking at the ranking board, saying that she managed to enter the top 50 because she passed the 3rd level and is already going into the 4th. So far, the #1 prodigy of the Outer Sect, named Nalan Chuang, endured an entire hour on the 4th level. If she can hold on for at least 15 minutes, she will enter the top 10 of the Pride of Heaven list. But suddenly, the protagonist's name also appears on the screen. They are surprised to see that he managed to appear since he entered the top 1,000 just by completing the 1st level, and his time was truly absurd. On the other hand, some people say that if he managed to defeat Naudi, who reached the 3rd level, then it should not be a big deal for him to get there. Jiaoran becomes more and more irritated with this whole situation, saying that, from the looks of it, those two have been dual cultivating quite a lot over the past few days. Suddenly, Chuang arrives and everyone is surprised, because he is the #1 prodigy, and they say he has the Qilin bloodline. The men are not very happy because he is somewhat handsome, but his arrogance goes beyond all limits. Chuang looks at them and activates his bloodline, defeating the two of them in 1 second. He keeps walking, saying that he hates people who talk about him behind his back. He looks at Jiaoran, who is already irritated, and she asks what he is doing there. Chuang provokes her because he heard that her little boyfriend ran away with another girl, so he is only there to laugh in her face. Jiaoran becomes furious, asking if he wants to die, and advances, telling him to shut up. But before they can enter a battle, Niu Ao appears and grabs both of their arms. Currently, he is in the top 10 of the intersect's Pride of Heaven, a cultivator at the peak of core formation. Zhao Ran asks if he is there to avenge what happened to his cousin, because he should be afraid of causing trouble with that beloved favorite of the elder's granddaughter. Niu Ao shows the mark on his chest, saying that this time, he has direct authorization from Tianqiang, so there is no reason to fear anything. Chuang keeps laughing, saying that from the looks of it, he did not come there for nothing, because a newly arrived outer sect disciple facing someone at the peak of core formation will be quite interesting. While they were arguing, people shout, saying that the protagonist has already reached the top 200, and that is beyond reality because he is climbing far too quickly. On the path to heaven, on the second level, the protagonist was using his blazing flame palm and defeating all the monsters with incredible ease. The path to heaven notifies him that level 2 has also been completed, and he can choose one of 3 rewards. He looks at the options and says that blade techniques are useless to him, and origin nourishment pills are like candy, so he will have to take the last option. He chose the grade 2 flying sword White Jade Radiance. He continues climbing the stairs, saying that the level of that sword is so low that it is not even worth looking at, so he will find a way to pass it on later. As soon as he reaches the 3rd stage, he is surprised, saying that this place is far too crowded. And now he understands why most outer sect disciples can only pass the 3rd level after reaching core formation. However, since he has made it this far, he needs to test his limits, even if he cannot pass. He attacks the monsters with everything he has. Using his blazing flame palm, he manages to defeat some monsters, but the others move far too quickly. He realizes that he is about to be caught and thinks that it is over. However, he uses his other leg to strike a monster, breaking that beast's teeth. Even after taking an almost direct attack, he notices that he only has a few superficial scratches and is surprised by the power of the Crimson Yang sacred body. The monsters continue attacking, but now that he knows he is basically immortal, he starts eliminating all of them with extreme ease, because with his absurd physique, he might really be able to pass. He continues destroying everything in front of him and easily defeats all the monsters in his path. His clothes were torn and stained with blood. Suddenly, his body and clothes begin to heal. He realizes that, under the constant baptism of the Crimson Yang power, his physique has not only become much more resistant, but also recovers extremely faster, and perhaps he can even face the 4th level. The path to heaven notifies him that level 3 has been completed, and he can choose one of 3 rewards. He already knows that the pills and artifacts obtained inside the path to heaven cannot be used inside it. So if he wants to challenge the 4th level, he has no choice, because he needs to pick a new technique. He begins cultivating his new technique since there is no time limit on the path to heaven, so he can leave the 4th level for after he masters that technique. Outside, people cannot believe it, asking if it is possible that there was some kind of error, but others ask if they are joking, because that heavenly ascension matrix was created by the sacred origin patriarch himself, and in 8,000 years, it has never made a single mistake. The protagonist was already 13th in the ranking, and no one understood how he was capable of doing that. What kind of monster had he become? Because it took him only 15 minutes to pass the 3rd level. And even if that is not the best possible time, the protagonist is still only at the 5th stage of foundation establishment. Even someone in core formation challenging the 3rd level might not be able to pass it at that speed. Zhaoran was still trying to understand what kind of opportunity that boy had found to grow so much. Niu Ao tells everyone to be quiet and stresses that this is only the outer sect's Pride of Heaven list, and yet they are already acting like that since the outer sect is nothing but a bunch of useless people. Luki starts coming out and she managed to endure 15 minutes on the 4th level, which means she is in 9th place for now, pushing Zhaoran down to 10th place. Everyone starts congratulating her, but she says it was nothing. Zhaoran says that she only climbed a few positions and is already acting so proud. Luki says that is true, it was only a few positions, but it is already enough to stand above a certain fox. Zhaoran stresses that it does not matter whether she was surpassed or not, since Niu Ao from the inner sect is there to settle some things, so she will not be able to protect Zhao Mu. Luki thinks that guy is probably Nuti's cousin, which means he is there because of Nuti, but he is staring at Zhao Mu. Meanwhile, inside, the protagonist was already finishing his cultivation. He opens his eyes and tries to use the purple lightning bind, managing to cause a great impact. He points out that lightning attribute techniques really are much harder to cultivate, and if it were not for his comprehension, he would not have been able to understand the basics in half an hour. Besides, the range of the purple lightning bind is large, and this will be perfect against several enemies at the same time. He stands up saying that he has rested enough and that it is time to see what kind of enemy is waiting for him on the 4th level. but as soon as he enters, he comes across only a single beast. And even so, the pressure is absurd, so the only thing left is to give it his all. The monster begins attacking and he manages to dodge, but he's not fast enough and ends up being wounded. The protagonist finds an opening and uses the blazing flame palm, but the beast manages to dodge. He realizes that it is far too fast, so he's unable to land a hit. However, he would like to see if it will keep running after taking a shock. The monster is paralyzed in midair, and the protagonist takes the chance to try using his strongest palm strike, but the beast manages to change direction in the air and dodges the attack. It counterattacks, taking one of the protagonist's arms. He looks at the beast, which had his arm in its mouth, and thinks that, from the looks of it, this is how it ends, accepting that the beast will win. However, the system appears, saying that he offered himself as food to a fierce beast, and because of that, a 10,000 times return has been activated. Another arm grows from his body, and his entire body begins to change. He obtained the human emperor bloodline. He is surprised to see that he got a 10,000 times return and the human emperor bloodline. The system explains that legend says that at the beginning of time, 10,000 races were born at the same time, and heroes fought each other for supremacy. The human race ended up weakened, almost being driven to extinction. It was at that critical moment that several supreme powerhouses emerged among humans, annihilating every enemy that appeared to face the human race. They pushed their bodies and bloodlines to the limit, reaching absurd combat power. With that, they managed to turn the situation around, defeating powerful enemies and ensuring that humanity continued to exist. The protagonist becomes excited, saying that perhaps one day he will also be able to walk among the stars and exterminate all invaders. Now, with his human emperor bloodline, he releases a dense and powerful aura. With a single attack, he destroys half the place, leaving the beast frightened. He asks the leopard if it still wants to play, and the leopard, even frightened, charges forward. However, now the protagonist only smiles, seeing that the leopard has become much slower than before. He dodges the attacks with ease, and with a single blow, splits the leopard in half. The path to heaven notifies him that the 4th level has been completed, and he can choose one of 3 rewards. The options are a grade 4 windpath pill, a grade 4 magic treasure, the cold descent spear, and a mid-level mystic grade technique, the Great Expansion Monument Hand. The protagonist says that all of them are very good, but unfortunately, he can only choose one thing. He decides to take the pill and later give it to someone outside because there must be chaos after seeing him climb like this. People shout that the protagonist's ranking has changed again. He has become number 1 on the Outer Sex Pride of Heaven list. Luki is already soaked, saying that he really did it. Jiaoran still does not understand what is happening with that boy. Niu Ao is also shocked, saying that he managed to reach the top while only being at the 5th stage of Foundation establishment. So this must be cut off at the root immediately. Otherwise, no one will be able to defeat him. The protagonist reaches the 5th level and sees 5 great demons at the middle stage of Golden Core, and that is already too much for him. He thinks that this is already beyond him and surrenders, saying that the monsters do not need to do anything because he recognizes his limits. However, one of the monsters tries to attack him, and the protagonist asks it to calm down, saying that when he has enough strength, he will come back to challenge them. And from the looks of it, that will not take very long. As soon as he starts to leave, everyone gathers beside him, and he asks if they are all there to see him. Niu Ao releases his strength and walks over to the protagonist, saying that he finally appeared, because he has been waiting there for quite some time. Luki and Jiaoran step in front of him. Luki asks the protagonist to be careful because that is Niu Ao, number 8 on the Intersex Pride of Heaven list. Jiaoran tells him to go ahead because the 2 of them will hold that guy back there. Jiao Mu is a little surprised, saying that Luki trying to help him is understandable. But Jiaoran is truly something he did not expect. She explains that she has her own reasons for doing this. Niu Ao thinks that, for the 2 of them to protect that boy like this, it seems the people behind them have already noticed his potential, so he cannot waste any more time and needs to eliminate that boy before the elders appear. Niu Ao advances, pushing the 2 of them aside, saying that no one will stop him since he is there to avenge his cousin. Jiao Mu does a few stretches and smiles, saying that he has just warmed up. Now he can test the strength of a cultivator at the peak of core formation. He charges forward, activating the human emperor bloodline. A huge explosion occurs and people are shocked, questioning whether that is really the strength of someone at the 5th stage of Foundation establishment, since he is directly enduring the attacks of an expert at the peak of core formation. On top of that, that light coming out of his body might be the human emperor bloodline. Jiao Mu had blocked Niu Ao's punch with one hand and tells him that, with brute strength alone, Niu Ao may be unable to win. Niu Ao is still surprised and wonders how many secrets that brat can still be hiding, because he can no longer hold this back. He tries to push the protagonist away, and the two women shout for him to run. Niu Ao shouts that now he will die under sword intent, so he can consider himself to have lived long enough. The protagonist tries to retreat, but the sword intent is too fast. He realizes that it is Tianxiang's sword intent. He activates the human emperor bloodline again to try to defend himself, thinking that he needs to endure it as firmly as possible. A huge explosion occurs and Luki shouts his name, but Zhaoran explains to her that it is useless, because that is the sword intent of a nascent soul cultivator. At the Foundation establishment stage, the protagonist has probably already turned to dust. She thinks that now she will not be able to complete her mission, and that is irritating. Niu Ao starts laughing, saying that this is exactly what happens when someone does not know their own place and tries to offend someone great. Luki becomes furious, but suddenly they hear someone coughing. The protagonist, completely destroyed but with a smile on his face, asks if this is that brat's sword intent because, to him, it is nothing special. However, one of his arms had been torn off. Niu Ao cannot understand how that is possible because anyone else should have been completely destroyed. He advances, saying that the protagonist is already at his limit, so he can end all of this now. Luki tries to stop him, but he throws her away, telling her to get out of the way. When he was about to deliver the final blow, the protagonist thinks that his body has no strength left to move. However, an overwhelming pressure strikes Niu Ao, pushing him into the ground. He looks up, shouting who dared to stand in his way. The Saintess Zixuan appears, saying that it was her and asking if anyone has any objections to that. Niu Ao kneels and says that he would never dare question any decision or action of hers. However, he does not know why the Saintess appeared there. Everyone bows before her, and she looks at the protagonist, saying that she was truly surprised by everything he did, since he managed to reach number 1 on the Outer Sex Pride of Heaven list, although that is not really anything worth bragging about. Even so, reaching that point with only his current cultivation makes him the only one in the entire history of the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin. Because of his absurd regeneration, the protagonist had basically already recovered completely, and laughs, saying that it was only luck. Zixuan extends her hand to him, asking if he would accept her as his master. However, 3 other elders appear, shouting that they heard a supreme human prodigy had appeared in the outer sect and asking where he is, because they want to see him with their own eyes. The Sword Elder tells them not to even try competing with him, because he has gone 800 years without accepting a disciple, waiting for a human prodigy. However, the other 2 do not let it go, saying that they will not give up on that boy. One of the disciples looks up, asking who those old men are, and his friend beside him tells him not to talk like that, because those are the human elders of the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin. The 5th elder of the demonic sect, named Zhou Siliang, argues with the Saintess, saying that she has already gone too far because it was not easy for the humans to have a prodigy like that, so how could they let the demonic race take him away? He is the 5th elder of the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin and a formation master. His skills with formations are extraordinary. The 7th elder of the demonic sect, Feng Deng, also argues with the Saintess, saying that she already took Mu Juling, so she cannot be allowed to take that human prodigy too. That old man is also an elder of the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin, and his strength does not draw much attention, but he is a renowned alchemist. The 3rd elder of the demonic sect, Dugu Zhan, stresses that in the cultivation world, strength is what truly matters. So if the protagonist chooses him as his master, he will give him a complete set of defensive Dharma treasures of grade 7 or higher, and he will also teach him the art of battling heaven and earth, which took him his entire life to master. He was the one who carved a path through slaughter all the way to the depths of the ancient Forbidden Zone, using that very same technique of battling heaven and earth, and that was how he earned the position of 3rd elder. People are amazed because there are only 4 human elders in the demonic sect, and 3 of them appeared there. The protagonist's talent is truly terrifying, and becoming a direct personal disciple like this is enough to make anyone envious. The Saintess and the other 3 surround the protagonist, releasing their auras and asking who he will choose as his master. Zhao Mu smiles and says that maybe he can choose all of them. This leaves the 3 elders surprised. The Saintess laughs, saying that she has no objections, and that it only depends on what the 3 elders think of this proposal. Siliang becomes a little worried, saying that the formation master lineage requires an absurd amount of time studying formations. John explains that improving combat strength requires constant training without rest. Deng also says that becoming an alchemy master takes a tremendous amount of time, and it is impossible to divide one's attention like that. The protagonist releases the human emperor bloodline once again and shouts, asking how he could possibly disappoint the expectations of the 3 elders. Because of that, he suggests spending 3 days learning from each of them separately. That way, he can take a test, and if he can meet each elder's expectations in the shortest possible time, It will prove that he can handle all three at the same time. Once again, the three elders are surprised to see the human emperor bloodline right in front of them. The Saintess agrees again, saying that it is decided, and leaves while taking Niu Ao with her, because she will do her best to give a proper explanation for what happened. The protagonist thanks her very much for everything she did and in the end thinks that the Saintess is truly a good person. To thank her, he shouts, saying that if she needs his help with cultivation in the future, then he will not hold back and will do his best to make her feel like the most loved woman in the world. Zixuan becomes a little embarrassed and says that they will discuss that a little later. Siliang ties up the protagonist, saying that now is not the time for chatting because they need to go train formations first. The protagonist agrees and says goodbye to Luqi, asking her to be careful with Tianxiang. She also says goodbye to him and asks him not to worry. Everyone else only watches, but among them, one person stands out. He is the cultivator who captured the protagonist. He is completely shocked, thinking that that brat really became a true personal disciple, and from the looks of it, he can no longer stay in the demonic sect. However, he thinks more carefully about it since the rest of his family is still in the demonic sect of the sacred origin, and there is no way for them to escape. The Daxia dynasty, where Zhao Mu had been before, seems to have become the target of the neighboring Great Zhou dynasty, and now it is on the verge of completely collapsing. If his family can save the Daxia dynasty, that would be like doing Zhao Mu a huge favor, and perhaps the protagonist will show mercy and spare his family. He starts flying, saying that this is a good plan and that he needs to find his father and explain the whole situation right away. Not long after, at Mystic Formation Peak, the two arrive and Siliang explains that this is his Formation Valley. In total, there are 3,270 formations spread throughout that place, and it is also the core of the mountain protection formation of the demonic sect of the sacred origin. When that formation is fully activated, that place becomes the safest spot in the entire sect. The protagonist looks around and asks if that also means the formations of the path to heaven were made by Elder Siliang. The elder is surprised and says that even though he considers himself a great genius in formations, even if he spent his entire life, he would never be able to create a supreme formation like the path to heaven. He explains that the path to heaven was personally created by the sacred origin patriarch 8,000 years ago. Thanks to it, the demonic sect of the sacred origin has been able to stand firmly in the forest of 10,000 demons to this day. Unmatched. Zhao Mu realizes just how absurd the patriarch was, because he heard that the patriarch disappeared 1,000 years after founding the sect, and he wonders whether it is possible that he died. The elder stresses that he has no idea where the patriarch might be. Some say he overcame the tribulation and ascended, while others say he discovered an incredible secret and ended up being imprisoned by some force, unable to escape to this day. The protagonist is surprised by that second story, questioning what kind of force would be capable of suppressing someone like the patriarch. Siliang tells the protagonist that it is still far too early for him to get involved with that kind of thing because they need to go to the cave first and test his aptitude for formations. They go to the cave and a girl comes out calling the elder master. She is Siliang's disciple named Xiong Yorong. She asks her master what he is doing in the cave today, but the protagonist is surprised because those things were very big. Yorong notices that he was staring too much, and the protagonist tries to look away, thinking that he has just embarrassed himself because he almost lost his composure in front of his senior sister. The elder introduces the protagonist, saying that he is her new junior brother. He also introduces her to the protagonist, saying that although her cultivation is not that high, she is a genius in divine patterns, someone who appears only once every century. Zhao Mu tries to be polite and greets her, but she was not very happy about all this, since he had looked at certain parts of her body earlier. The elder says goodbye to the two of them, saying that he has some things to handle, so he will let her guide the protagonist through the basics of formation techniques for now. Yorong calls him inside and picks something up. The protagonist asks what it is. Yorong explains that it is a divine pattern disc, and all he has to do is hold that disc and press it against the center of his forehead. She explains that he cannot use his eyes because he needs to try to feel it with his heart. Zhao Mu concentrates, and suddenly, his consciousness is taken somewhere else, in front of a huge disc filled with markings. Yorong takes the disc from his hand and says that this is enough for now, asking him to say whether he saw anything just now. The protagonist explains that he saw a large disc filled with strange symbols, which leaves her a little surprised. She asks how many symbols he saw while thinking that being able to visualize the divine pattern disc on the very first attempt shows that he really has a lot of talent, and no wonder the Elder Master personally brought him there. Zhao Mu tries to remember how many symbols he saw on that disc, but he stresses that he cannot remember exactly because maybe there were approximately 1,000, or perhaps a little more. However, he can guarantee that it was not more than 2,000. Yorong is surprised and thinks that he managed to see more than 1,000 divine patterns right away, because on her first time, she only managed to see a few dozen. Zhao Mu asks if those symbols he saw are the divine patterns they keep talking about. She explains that this is exactly it. Everything in heaven and earth follows an order, and what sustains that order are the divine patterns hidden in the corners of space. Divine patterns are everywhere and exist in an absurd variety. No one knows for sure how many types exist in the world. She has studied formations since she was a child for more than 30 years now, and even though she has reached grade 6 as a formation master, she has only mastered a little over 6,700 variations. The protagonist is surprised, asking if she really managed all that, and questions whether that means his aptitude to become a formation master is poor. Yorong becomes irritated, thinking that maybe he only wants to show off because he saw almost 2,000 patterns on his first try. However, she decides to let it go and stresses that now that the protagonist has managed to see divine patterns, he needs to learn how to control them. He becomes excited and asks her to show him what needs to be done. She asks him to pay attention, and suddenly the two are taken into a subspace. Completely surprised, he asks if that is a formation. Yorong says it is not exactly like that, but he can call it that because it also works. She starts controlling some things, saying that this is her current strength. She can use the divine pattern disc to alter the patterns and create certain scenes. But suddenly she starts feeling a little dizzy. The protagonist notices this and holds her before she falls, asking if she is all right. But with her breathing heavy, Yorong says that she is fine, because manipulating divine patterns consumes a lot of energy. She pulls herself together and says that he does not need to help her, because she is already better. She explains that this happens because, although she has good mastery over formations, her aptitude in cultivation is very low, and she is still stuck at the peak of foundation establishment. The protagonist is surprised, saying that advancing to core formation should not be that difficult, and asks whether a grade 5 origin nourishment pill cannot solve this situation. Yorong stresses that not even grade 6 pills work on her. The Elder Master said that her purple mansion was damaged from birth, and her meridians cannot properly accumulate energy. Unless she can obtain a grade 8 origin gathering pill, she has no chance of reaching core formation. Zhao Mu thinks of a great idea and calls her, saying that if he manages to get an origin gathering pill for her, then what would she give him in return for that favor? She becomes very excited, saying that if he can get a grade 8 origin gathering pill, she will sell everything she owns, even break open her money jars and gather everything to give to him. Zhao Mu says that she probably already knows that a grade 8 origin gathering pill is not something that can be bought with money alone. Embarrassed, she stresses that if that is not enough, then she will sell herself to him as well. Hearing this, the protagonist takes her hand and seals the deal without thinking twice. She becomes a little suspicious, thinking that she feels as if she has just been manipulated into falling into a trap. Zhao Mu says that by chance he has some origin gathering pills and will give them to her for now. She takes a deep breath and accepts them, saying that they are all grade 5, but they no longer have any effect on her. Still, she thanks him and says she will keep the gift. As soon as she accepts them, the system sees that the protagonist gifted a grade 5 origin nourishment pill, and the return was 200 times. Because of that, he obtained a grade 6 nourishment pill. Since he had given 3 pills, 3 rewards appeared. The second reward was 50 times, and he managed to obtain a grade 5 heart nourishment pill. And the third reward was 3,000 times, causing him to obtain a grade 8 origin gathering pill. He laughs, thinking that the pill has finally appeared and that, from the looks of it, his senior sister will not escape from his hands either. Suddenly, something starts happening, causing a huge tremor and noise. The protagonist is startled, questioning what is happening there. Yorong explains that it is the mountain protection formation. She snaps her fingers, and 3 people appear in front of her. She asks if they have already found out what caused the damage to the formation. One of the 3 explains that the 3 damage points of the formation were caused by evil beasts. At the location, weak fluctuations of evil energy were also left behind. But they have already reported it to the core of the sacred ground, and the Holy Sun said he will personally investigate. Yorong thanks them for the report and praises them, saying that they did a good job so they can rest now. The 3 thank her and leave. The protagonist asks if something happened, but she says it was nothing serious, just some demonic activity, and that this is common in the demonic sect of the sacred origin. Zhao Mu asks if the demonic sect is not already a demonic faction, so why are there still evil entities causing trouble inside it? Yorong stresses that since ancient times, the Jianwu continent has been divided between 2 great factions, the human race and the demon race, which hate each other deeply. In this kind of situation, the position of the demonic sect of the sacred origin ends up being very complicated. They are not accepted by the demon race, nor trusted by the human race. Who knows how many people see them only as a thorn in their side? The protagonist finally understands. Because of that, it is not strange that humans and demons cannot live peacefully inside the sect. They return to the lodging, and she stresses that she used up a lot of energy just now, so she will go upstairs to rest before continuing to teach him. The protagonist says that is fine and that there is no problem at all. Before going upstairs, she stresses that he can walk wherever he wants, but he's not allowed to go up there. Jiaomu just watches and thinks that he has the impression that before long, she will be begging him to go up there. However, he decides to leave that for later since he also wants to rest a little. He takes off his clothes and enters the lake, saying that the disciples of the demonic sect of the sacred origin really know how to enjoy life, because every place even has a hot spring. He opens the system to inspect it and sees that he still has 7 million spirit stones, but that is nowhere near what he needs for cultivation. Just to advance to the 6th stage of foundation establishment, he would need more than 100 million spirit stones. With 3 elders and the saintess supporting him, that cuckold Tianxiang should not have the courage to act openly, but in the shadows, he may still try to do something, so the protagonist needs to become stronger. He looks up and thinks that he needs to start with "You're wrong." As soon as he tries to go up the stairs, a magic circle appears, pointing several weapons at him. From inside, Yurong asks what he thinks he is doing. The protagonist points out that he was only curious about what is upstairs, because that fragrance is strange, and she should not take it the wrong way. While she was bathing, she looks back and asks if he really thinks she does not know what he is trying to do. But either way, he cannot go upstairs. That upper floor has long been protected by several layers of formations. Even someone in the nascent soul realm would struggle to force their way into that place. Zhao Mu uncorks the bottle, telling his senior sister that she is mistaken, because he thinks he can go up there and sit for a while to rest. And she will be the one inviting him up herself. As soon as she smells it, she quickly leaves the bathroom and goes to him. She stares at the grade 8 origin gathering pill while the protagonist stares at something else. She grabs his hand, asking where he got it, and tells him to hurry up and let her see it. But he steps back. She tries a different approach and, with a sweet voice and a charming smile, calls him closer. She begs him to let her take a better look at the origin gathering pill, because she only wants to confirm whether it is truly authentic. Jiaomu says that she can look but not touch, because she might swallow it in one gulp and then say it was fake. Then how could he argue with her, since there would be no way to prove it? Yorong swears that she will only look and will not touch it until he gives permission. But while making that oath, her towel accidentally falls. The protagonist is surprised, and she, embarrassed, says that it had nothing to do with that. Without clothes or a towel, she asks him to stop fooling around and follow her upstairs. As she climbs the stairs, he was seeing paradise. Zhao Mu laughs, saying that this really made him go up. Not long after, inside the upper floor, he shows her the pill and asks if she is done looking. Yorong stresses that, without a doubt, it truly is a grade 8 origin gathering pill. Since she cannot lose that opportunity, she moves closer and shouts, telling him to name his price, because even if she has to give up everything she owns, she will buy it. Zhao Mu says that in truth, he's not exactly short on money. However, he smells something very good and asks where that scent is coming from. Yorong shows him a plant and asks what he thinks about exchanging it for the pill. The protagonist says that, like this, she is trying to take advantage of him because no matter how fragrant that orchid is, it is not worth more than an origin gathering pill. Yorong explains that it is not an ordinary orchid. Its name is the immortal blue Ganoderma, an extremely rare spiritual herb. Her father obtained it by chance while exploring an ancient secret realm in search of an origin gathering pill for her. Elder Dung personally appraised it and said that it is a grade 8 spiritual herb still in its growth phase. When it matures, she thinks it may even surpass the level of a spiritual herb and become a priceless treasure-level herb. Zhao Mu is surprised by this explanation, and she takes advantage of the moment, saying that if he accepts the trade, she can also add another 50 million spirit stones. Zhao Mu thinks that indeed that orchid is already worth the trade, but judging by how anxious she is, he can squeeze a little more out of her. The protagonist says that even though that orchid is very valuable, the cost of cultivating it until it becomes a treasure herb must be absurd. And perhaps he might not even live to see the day it matures, even if he waits hundreds of years. Yorong becomes worried, saying that the protagonist is indeed right because it takes a very long time for the orchid to fully mature. She stands up and says that she has a new option because she will add another benefit for him. The protagonist asks what kind of benefit, and she places her hand on her chest, saying that it is right there, and tears off her own bra. Zhao Mu is surprised by the proposal, but asks what kind of person she thinks he is. But Yorong, embarrassed, says that he misunderstood everything and asks him to look properly, only for it to start transforming into something else. She explains that it is a grade 7 defensive Dharma treasure her father gave her called the Dragon Tendon Armor. It was made from dragon tendons and scales, can change form, and its defense is absolute, able to withstand attacks from nascent soul experts for a while. Zhao Mu takes the item, stressing that it really is incredible, and asks if she is willing to give it to him. Yurong points out that she spends the entire year in the Formation Valley studying formations, and almost never leaves, so it will not be missed much by her, since she does not take many risks. Zhao Mu takes off his shirt to put on his new item, thanking her and saying that he will accept it. Yurong stares at the protagonist's body and is impressed, thinking that his body, as a man, can truly be incredible. As soon as the item adapts to the protagonist's body, he looks at her and notices that she was staring. She tries to hide it, but Zhao Mu had already noticed. He thinks that perhaps he will make use of the spirit stones the Saintess had given him. Zhao Mu calls her and says that he has already received too much from her and even feels embarrassed about it, so he will return those spirit stones. She becomes suspicious but accepts them. The system detects that he gifted 50 million spirit stones, and the return was 200 times. Because of that, he obtained 10 billion spirit stones. He laughs, saying that now he will no longer need to worry about cultivation resources. Zhao Mu says that he feels his cultivation is advancing and asks if there is any room she can lend him for cultivation. She explains that he only needs to go out the door and turn right, but she is impressed because the protagonist had just advanced and was already about to advance again. From the looks of it, he is a true monster. He enters the room and closes the door and asking the system to start his cultivation. He concentrates and begins spending his money. 3 days later, Yurong was sitting there, pointing out that 3 days have already passed and wondering how the protagonist is doing. Meanwhile, inside the room, he was still cultivating until suddenly, a very powerful energy begins to emerge from his body. He reached the 8th stage of foundation establishment. His body had changed drastically, and he says that those 10 billion spirit stones were exactly enough for him to reach the 8th stage of foundation establishment. From the looks of it, his constitution is truly frightening. Suddenly, he hears someone asking if he made another breakthrough. The master appears, saying that he is an excellent disciple, and asking how he has been over the past few days. The protagonist greets him and explains that his senior sister has already taught him quite a lot, mainly about formations, and that he can already feel the fluctuations of divine patterns. Siliang explains that he was not talking about that. The protagonist becomes confused and asks what exactly he is talking about. The elder asks what the protagonist thinks of Yurong and whether he likes her. Zhao Mu is surprised by that question coming directly from the elder master. Siliang says that he does not need to be so frightened because he needs to understand one thing, that girl's identity is not simple at all. She came from the depths of the Forest of 10,000 Demons and belongs to the Bear tribe. Her father is a powerful expert in the Tribulation Transcendence realm, someone with enormous influence across the entire demon race. So if Zhao Mu can marry Yurong, he will easily save 1,000 years of effort. The protagonist laughs and says that his priority right now is cultivation, and that he is not very interested in romance. But the truth is that with the help of the system, his advantage is already enormous, and he will not give up the entire forest just because of one tree. Suddenly, another person starts shouting Siliang's name, telling him to hand over the disciple already. Siliang says that Deng has already come to pick up the protagonist, and when it comes to this kind of thing, he is never late. The elder gives some books to the protagonist, saying that even if he is going somewhere else, he cannot stop reviewing his studies on formations. He needs to read those 3 books often. Zhao Mu thanks the elder once again for everything he has done and says that he will read them as soon as he can. Deng looks at the protagonist and says that, judging by the expression he is showing, he obviously is not suited to studying formations. And although the path of alchemy also requires talent and comprehension, its demands are not as absurd as those of a formation master, mainly because of Zhao Mu's pure yang body. As long as he masters fire control, refining pills will yield twice the result with half the effort. Siliang asks Deng to stop talking so much nonsense, because the protagonist saw more than 1,000 divine patterns the very first time he encountered the divine pattern disc, and a talent like that appears only once every 1,000 years. Deng is impressed and says that being able to see more than 1,000 divine patterns on the very first contact is truly astonishing. That probably has never happened in the 8,000 years of history of the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin. But now it is time to forget that, because perhaps the protagonist's talent for the Tao of Alchemy is even more terrifying, so they need to go to the Alchemy Valley to test it. Yurong watches him leave with a rosy face and the pill in her hands. Not long after, in the Alchemy Valley, the two arrive, and Deng asks if the protagonist has ever studied fire attribute techniques. Zhao Mu says yes, but explains that it was not much. The elder takes him inside and shows him a furnace, saying that, "This is great. All he has to do is use his fire attribute to heat that alchemy furnace, because he will continuously add medicinal herbs, and the protagonist only needs to control the temperature so they do not turn into ashes. Zhao Mu says that he understands and says that he will do his best. He begins controlling the fire, but Deng is impressed and thinks that this pure young fire is truly dominant. However, he notices that it looks more like true solar fire. This is the highest level among alchemy flames, and it seems that that brat's aptitude is even greater than he had imagined. The pill is quickly completed. Deng laughs happily, saying that refining a superior grade pill on the very first attempt shows that he really is a prodigy among millions. The protagonist tells his master that perhaps he is exaggerating a little, but the elder says that if he is not mistaken, the protagonist has awakened the Crimson Yang's sacred body, because only the Crimson Yang's sacred body can manifest such pure, true solar fire. Zhao Mu says that is right, however he only knows how to use the blazing flame palm and his control over fire is still very superficial. Deng stresses that this does not matter. In that alchemy valley, besides alchemy itself, they are also experts in fire attribute techniques. Because of that, the protagonist can go choose some techniques to practice and can choose whichever ones he finds most suitable. They go to the scripture pavilion, and as soon as they enter, the protagonist is impressed by the amounts of pills. That place has so many pills stored that it almost looks like the demonic sex warehouse. Deng explains that those are only some inferior pills refined recently. Those of grade 5 or higher are stored in the treasure pavilion at the central sacred ground. The elder picks up some techniques and hands them to the protagonist, saying that those are all earth grade techniques, and he can choose among them. The mystic grade and yellow grade ones probably will not draw much attention. The protagonist looks at the techniques. Among them are the Crimson Flame Tyrant Classic, the Scarlet Flame Hegemon Scripture, the Earth Abyss Fire, the Burning Wood Blood Rainbow, and the Endless Life Art. Part of him points out that he would like to take them all, but too much greed can bring great trouble. He thinks that the Scarlet Flame Hegemon Scripture is an extremely pure and very domineering fire attribute technique. Perhaps it is not ideal for alchemy, but it is excellent for combat. However, the Endless Life Art is also excellent. Besides strengthening the properties of herbs during alchemy, it can also heal injuries. So, he decides to choose those two. The elder is surprised and walks over to the protagonist, saying that it is not bad for a cultivator to be competitive and fearless. However, if that old man John tries to convince him to train in the Forest of 10,000 Demons, he must not listen to his madness, because that man is famous for being reckless and would easily throw the protagonist alone into a nest of demonic beasts to fend for himself. Zhao Mu thanks his master for the teachings and stresses that he will remember this. The elder laughs, saying that he only needs to be careful because he does not want to see such a promising disciple die so early. While the two are talking, someone knocks on the door calling for the master. A girl named Tao Subai enters and says that the senior brother's residence has already been prepared, asking if the master has any further instructions. Deng introduces her, saying that her name is Subai and that from now on, she will help the protagonist with his introduction to the Tao of alchemy. As soon as the two leave, the protagonist tells her that she must have become the master's disciple before him, so why did she just call him senior brother? Subai explains that the protagonist has just been accepted as the elder's personal disciple, so his position is higher than that of the inner sect disciples. After walking for a few minutes, she shows him a house, saying that this is the residence of personal disciples. The clothes, food, and all daily necessities have already been prepared for him. In addition, she says that she lives nearby, and if he needs anything, he only has to call and she will appear immediately. The protagonist smiles, asking if she really will appear for anything, and moves closer, holding her by the waist, asking if she would even appear to warm his bed a little. The protagonist thinks that this girl is far too serious, so he feels a little tempted to tease her. But Subai becomes extremely irritated, asking him to stop talking nonsense, because although she calls him senior brother, if it were based only on brute strength, she could crush him with just one hand. Zhao Mu becomes startled and says that he was only joking. Still irritated, she simply turns around and leaves. But the protagonist thinks that this woman's aura is even stronger than Niu Ao's, who is half a step from nascent soul. This means that she is an expert at the nascent soul stage, or something very close to it. The protagonist starts following her again and she takes him to a furnace. After explaining a few things, she says that if anything is still missing, he only needs to tell her. This time, the protagonist does not joke around and says that there is no problem, and if he needs anything, he will let her know. He takes a look and says that the environment there is quite pleasant, and all the supplies are complete. He picks up some guides and starts reading, saying that although they are only grade 1 pills, their formulas are absurdly complicated. But since he is an active person, he ends up throwing the book aside, saying that it is better to forget it. because just reading about it is useless. He needs to practice. Besides, he can also take the opportunity to test the two techniques he obtained earlier. First, he starts by placing the medicinal herbs inside and combining the techniques of the Scarlet Flame Hegemon scripture and the Endless Life Art. He begins heating the alchemy furnace with the two techniques, but realizes that the fire is almost going out of control, so he tries to focus a little more. Quickly, 3 pills are completed. He looks at them and says that they do not look very pretty, but for a first attempt, that result is already excellent. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Elder Dung was watching and points out that that boy truly is a monster. His talent in formations and alchemy is absurd. John appears saying that even so, the protagonist managed to complete the 4th level of the path to heaven while still at the foundation establishment stage, which shows that his true talent lies in combat. Because of that, he is becoming more and more curious to see how he will perform in the Blood Battle Hall. Dung points out that humans have always had more talent than the demon race when it comes to alchemy and formations. But when it comes to combat, they end up being crushed by the difference in constitution and bloodline. Because of that, he truly hopes that the appearance of that boy can reignite the spirit of the human cultivators who have carried resentment for so long. 3 days later, the protagonist was exhausted, sitting on a mountain of pills. He points out that he was almost finished with his training. However, most of them are ordinary grade 1 pills, but some turned out with fairly decent quality, and for him, this level is already very good. Subai knocks on the door and enters with some special spiritual porridge from the Alchemy Valley. She explains that it helps recover spiritual energy and physical stamina. Zhao Mu quickly takes the porridge, saying that she appeared just when he was running out of spiritual energy and thanks her very much. Subai looks to the side and shouts in shock, asking if he refined all of that. The protagonist says yes and asks if the quality is not a little too low because the fire of his pure yang body is too fierce and he still has difficulty controlling the temperature. Subai thinks that he must be showing off without even meaning to, and ends up admitting that, as a personal disciple of the Elder, the protagonist truly is an alchemy prodigy. However, she stresses that there is no point asking her about alchemy because she is not an alchemist. Zhao Mu is surprised and thinks that she is not an alchemist, but she lives there in the Alchemy Valley and still possesses absurd strength, which means there must definitely be a complicated story behind all of this. He moves a little closer, saying that he had been very rude before and unfortunately still had not had the chance to apologize properly. He throws a bag containing something onto the tray, saying that she can consider it a small apology, and he sincerely hopes from the bottom of his heart that she can accept it. Subai is surprised, but accepts the apology. The system detects that the protagonist gifted a grade 4 Windsteps pill, and the return was 1,000 times. Because of that, he obtained a grade 7 Windsteps pill. In addition, he had also given her 30 grade 4 Foundation Establishment pills, and the return was 300 times. Because of that, he obtained a grade 7 Spiritual Gathering pill. He thinks that she has beauty and absurd strength. Besides, the return rewards really were generous, so he needs to come here and interact with her more often in the future. Dung asks the protagonist to come out. He goes outside and greets his master. The Elder says there is no need for formalities because he saw the progress he made over the past few days. But now, he needs to follow John to the Blood Battle Hall. Zhao Mu sees that John looks tired and asks if something happened. John explains that he had to deal with some clueless trash, and lately, the situation near the sect has been very unstable. The demon race of the Forest of 10,000 Demons is starting to move again. He intended to take the protagonist to train in the forest today, but now it no longer seems appropriate. Zhao Mu remembers that Yorong had mentioned before that demonic entities were trying to sabotage the mountain protection formation, and from the looks of it, another problem appeared that required the Elder to act personally. John says they should go and ask the protagonist to accompany him to the Blood Battle Hall. He agrees, while thinking that, from the looks of it, the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin really has not been very peaceful in recent days. He says goodbye to his alchemy master, saying that he needs to go now. Dung also says goodbye, saying that he may enter seclusion over the next few months to refine pills. And when the protagonist returns to the Alchemy Valley, if he needs anything, he only has to look for little Subai. As soon as the two leave, Subai tells her master that this time he really managed to find a rare genius as a personal disciple. Dung laughs, saying that his eye for talent has always been incredible. The Blood Battle Hall has existed for a very long time, practically since the founding of the sect. The disciples there have always carried the responsibility of fighting on the front lines. And if the demonic sect of the Sacred Origin has managed to remain standing until today, it was thanks to countless battles fought over the years. Jean stresses that this is why, while the Great Formation protects the safety of the sect, the Blood Battle Hall is the spear pointed outward. They eliminate enemies before they can even reach the sect. After hearing this explanation, the protagonist questions his new master, because they are from the demonic sect, so acting in such a righteous way does not make much sense. John asks whether, in Zhao Mu's mind, the demonic sect is a bunch of unscrupulous villains. The protagonist asks if that is not true, because he was kidnapped by an outer sect disciple of the demonic sect of the sacred origin. John explains that, in truth, that is more or less the image the world has of the demonic sect. This happens because they have lived isolated there, in the forest of 10,000 demons for a very long time, and have almost no contact with other factions. In reality, neither the human race nor the demon race understands the effort the Sacred Origin Patriarch made back then. Zhao Mu asks if the Sacred Origin Patriarch really had a special reason for founding the sect there, but John changes the subject, saying that they have finally arrived. Inside the blood battle hall, several people were training. The protagonist points out that everyone's aura inside really is absurd because they are worthy of the blood battle hall. Suddenly, two people arrive. The man is Yao Wugui, and the woman is Xing Ziyue. The elder introduces the two, saying that Wugui is the protagonist's senior brother and ranks 9th on the Pride of Heaven list, and that is his second senior sister, called Ziyu. The protagonist greets the two, and the elder calls Wugui to go with him to fetch the infinite bell. Wugui is surprised and asks if that is really necessary. John asks if Wugui is really saying that the personal disciple he wants is not qualified to be tested by the infinite bell. Wugui apologizes, saying that he would never dare think that, and says that he will fetch the bell immediately. But before leaving, he looks at Zhao Mu as if he does not like this. The protagonist says that he just arrived and, from the looks of it, has already irritated Wugui. Ziyue asks the protagonist not to mind it since that guy has a somewhat complicated temper. She changes the subject and holds his arm, saying that she heard around that he possesses a pure yang body, so he must be especially strong in that area. The protagonist becomes embarrassed and asks if she is panting. In addition, he asks if she does not think it is a little inappropriate to ask something so intimate right after they have just met. Ziyu starts laughing, saying that the protagonist is far too amusing, and stresses that she only wanted to feel what a pure yang body is really like. However, she's already a married woman, which means he arrived too late. Zhao Mu becomes even more embarrassed, but soon smiles, saying that she looks very young and he did not expect her to have married so early. Ziyu explained that she is already more than 200 years old and has not been married only once. Unfortunately, all 9 of her husbands lived very short lives. And thinking about it carefully, she is practically a middle-aged woman now, but she has never managed to experience that supreme pleasure of a strong young man. Zhao Mu is surprised to see that this woman buried 9 husbands in a row and asks if she is a black widow. Ziyue hugs him once again, asking him not to be so nervous, because she was only teasing him a little, and says that she's only 27 years old and still intact. Zhao Mu breathes in relief and says that from the looks of it, she really loves to joke, but he thinks that maybe not a single word coming out of her mouth is true. Suddenly, the two return with the infinite bell, and the elder asks her to stop teasing the protagonist. Zhao Mu asks his master what that infinite bell is for. He explains that the infinite bell is a trophy they obtained after fighting in an ancient secret realm. Although that bell is damaged, it still possesses the power of a grade 1 Dao treasure. Although it can no longer be used in combat, it still retains a special ability capable of testing a cultivator's potential. And since the elder first wants to verify his root bones before deciding whether to transmit the art of battling heaven and earth, they need to conduct that test. Zhao Mu says that he understands and walks over to the bell. The elder asks him to use all his strength and strike the bell with everything he has. The protagonist concentrates and throws an extremely powerful punch at the bell. The sound waves created by it leave everyone impressed, but it was going far beyond normal. The waves traveled across practically the entire continent. A being in a distant place opens his eyes and says that, from the looks of it, the human emperor has finally appeared, and when the young lady learns of this, she will be very happy. But unfortunately, it is already too late. Everything has already become inevitable, and no one can change it. In the middle of the forest of 10,000 demons, a demon asks if everyone else felt that as well. He stresses that the human emperor has been born, and the Jianwu continent is about to change completely. One of the demons asks how this could change the world, since he was sealed by someone, and what trick could possibly change anything. Another demon agrees, saying that it is better to go pay respects to the old ancestor and return to seclusion, because the old ancestor must have felt it too, and he gave no instructions. Another demon stresses that he would never dare disturb the venerable elder, so if they want to ask about this, they can go personally. The demon from before asks everyone to be silent, saying that the human emperor has been born and definitely will not remain unknown for long. Because of that, each of them should send some men to the plains to investigate this situation. Back at the blood battle hall, the protagonist asks his master if that was good enough. Jean laughs and says that it will do. However, he thinks that to cause a commotion of that size, that boy's bone talent must be absurd and no one can explain it. Ziyu teases Wugui, saying that she remembers his results in the test were not that good. Wugui stresses that this was because he did not use all his strength. The elder tells the protagonist that there is no longer any need to continue testing his bones. Now he can go practice the art of battle against heaven and earth. The so-called battle against heaven and earth is not just a sequence of movements, but a battle intent, a state of mind. From that moment on, the protagonist needs to pay attention to the changes in his master's aura. After that, he will demonstrate it only once. Jean concentrates, takes a deep breath, and begins releasing all of his power, creating a strong aura around him. That aura becomes stronger and stronger, forming other shapes. He prepares himself and makes a single movement, creating a colossal pillar of energy. After the demonstration, he looks at the protagonist and asks if he managed to comprehend it. Zhao Mu stresses that the battle against heaven and earth is the power to dominate all things. The elder looks at him and says that being able to comprehend it to that level is already very good. But the protagonist becomes upset and says that his master does not seem very satisfied because if he had known, he would not have rushed so much and should have waited until he advanced to core formation and improved his comprehension a little first. Jean explains that there is no need to rush the cultivation of the art of battle against heaven and earth. This set of techniques is more suitable to be tempered and understood in real battles. The more life and death battles the protagonist faces, the stronger he will naturally become. In addition, he also has another technique. He hands the technique to the protagonist, asking him to learn it first, because it should quickly increase his combat power. The name of that technique is the Sacred Origin Art. Zhao Mu asks if that technique has any connection to the Sacred Origin Patriarch. The elder says that is exactly right, that Sacred Origin Art was personally created by the Sacred Origin Patriarch himself. Although it is not a heavenly grade technique, it has immense potential, and if cultivated to its peak, perhaps it will not lose out to a heavenly grade technique at all. The protagonist becomes interested in the technique and says that he will do his best. The elder says that over the next few days, he can stay there and cultivate that technique as much as he can. He looks at Wugui and Ziyu, saying that the two of them must not cause trouble for their junior brother, especially Ziyu. The two say that they understand and ask the elder not to worry. The protagonist goes to one of the residences and, with the technique in his hand, says that this is exactly what should be expected of an upper-level Earth-grade technique. Even with his current comprehension, practicing it is still exhausting. In addition, from what he managed to understand, the Sacred Origin Art is not a combat technique, but an art that amplifies spiritual power. Moreover, this amplification does not require squeezing out one's potential or burning life force. It depends on strengthening the meridians. He sits on the ground and begins cultivating, thinking that the meridians are the conductors of spiritual power and are not easy to train at all. The fact that the Sacred Origin Art can do this already proves how powerful the Sacred Origin Patriarch was. But now it is time for him to put that technique into practice and see how many times he can amplify his spiritual power. 3 days later, the protagonist was still in seclusion, cultivating that technique as much as he could. He creates a miniature version of the blazing flame palm and throws that small flame, causing a huge explosion and revealing a magic circle. A portal opens beside him, and the Saintess points out that even with a defensive formation active, he was capable of causing that kind of destruction. She stresses that his speed of comprehension of the Sacred Origin Art has exceeded all expectations. Zhao Mu greets her and she touches his face with her feet, pointing out that now that he has passed the tests of the 3 elders, he should also change the way he addresses her. He becomes embarrassed and calls her master. The Saintess stresses that she has already spoken with Elder Jean and that they can leave immediately. She binds him with some roots and takes him into the subspace. A few seconds later, he is thrown onto a bed and she sits on top of him, asking if he knows why she accepted him as her disciple. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.